Merciful God, God Most High, let there be perfect rest for the souls of our loved ones who have gone into eternity. May they find shelter in your presence among the holy and the pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold them close to you forever. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May they find a home in you. May they rest in peace. And may we say, Amen. Please be seated. The late Rabbi Milton Steinberg of Park Avenue Synagogue came out of a long hospitalization and preached a very memorable sermon called "To Hold with Open Arms." Here is a short excerpt. After a long illness, I was permitted for the first time to step out of doors. And as I crossed the threshold, sunlight greeted me. That's my experience, all there is to it. And yet, so long as I live, I shall never forget that moment. In that instance, I looked about me to see whether anyone showed on their face the joy I felt, but no. There they walked, men, women, and children, in the glory of a golden flood, and so far as I could detect, there was none to give it heed. Then I remembered how often I too had been indifferent to sunlight, how often I had disregarded it, and I said to myself, how precious is the sunlight, but alas, how careless of it are we. How precious, how careless. That's been a refrain sounding in me ever since. Dr. Steinberg couldn't understand how the world could just keep moving on as if nothing had happened. That same sentiment often rushes to the fore when someone we love dies, someone who was central to our life. Whether they died after prolonged illness or died suddenly, our world has shattered. This is an absolute amputation, a cutting off of a vital organ. At this moment of shock, we don't seek explanation or meaning. We are simply struggling to catch our breath. Our life is shattered, yet all around us the world goes on. The trucks blare their cacophonous horns. People rush for the bus, the cab, the Uber, the Lyft, anything that'll move us along on our ordinary day. How can the world not come to a screeching halt? Our world will never be the same, we think, but not only do very few people stop, New York doesn't even skip a beat. The sun shines, the sky might be a radiant blue, and people keep on moving, not filled with awe or gratitude. Those sentiments would slow them down, God forbid. Is this going to happen when we die? And I wonder, would these people continue to rush headlong to fulfill their daily obligations, to keep their patterned ways, their precious schedule, if they knew they had only minutes to live? Yom Kippur 1986, Rabbi Kenneth Berger rose to deliver his sermon. He spoke to his congregation about the tragedy that many had witnessed earlier, 8 months earlier, in the floor of the sky. You remember? The explosion of Space Shuttle Challenger. Rabbi Berger focused on one terribly painful detail: the revelation that Challenger 7 astronauts had remained alive through the terrifying 65,000-foot fall to the ocean. He called his sermon, 5 minutes to live. Can you imagine knowing that in a few moments death was imminent, as our beloved Rabbi Pankin surely did? Rabbi Berger said to his congregation, which is, by the way, Road of Shalom in Tampa, "What would we think if, God forbid, you and I were in such circumstances? What would go through our mind?" Not quite 3 years later, Rabbi Berger was on a flight to Chicago from Denver, returning from a family vacation. The plane's tail engine exploded en route, crippling the controls. For 40 minutes, the passengers prepared for a crash landing. Rabbi Berger reached across the seats, gathered the hands of his daughter and son, trying to reassure them. The plane burst into flames after it hit the ground in Sioux City, killing 112 people, including the rabbi and his wife, both in their early 40s. When he gave his original sermon, Rabbi Berger said, "The scene still haunts me. The explosion in 5 minutes, if only I knew." Rabbi Berger then said, "You must stop and appreciate the blessings you have. If only I could." "Well," he said, "you still can. You still have today. If only we knew." It's tough to conjure up that kind of urgency at this Yizkor hour, isn't it? We're tired, we're hungry, we're feeling vulnerable during the fast. But there is something else that impedes perspective. We resist the urgency of the hour. We fight the notion that we're responsible for things wrong in our orbit. We're not the cause of our problems. We're not responsible for the estrangement within our family. And yet the liturgy is insistent. Aval anachnu chatanu, but we have sinned. We must at least take our share of the blame. At this Yizkor hour, we feel their presence. We want their knowledge, their inspiration. We want our deceased loved ones to be our teachers, inspiring us with their wisdom and courage, maybe even their ability to right wrongs and to make peace when it seemed impossible to do so. We so admire them at this Yizkor moment and wonder, how did she go on after her husband walked out on her with 3 young kids? How did he go on after the suicide of their child? How did the family hold their head high when the husband and father were sent to jail, convicted of doing what many others get away with? Where did they get the courage? A Holocaust survivor, a nurse under impossible conditions, watched a Jewish surgeon operating on a patient in that camp. A Nazi guard burst in and ordered everyone out to roll call and selection. "I can't go," the doctor said. "My patient will die if I leave the operating table. If you don't follow orders, your life will be over this minute." The doctor did not flinch. He continued the delicate operation. The bullet penetrated the back of his skull. In an instant, he crumpled to the ground. That moment, the nurse thought to herself, if I survive this horrible place, I want to devote my life to healing, hoping I can find even a fraction of the courage that doctor mustered and manifested in pursuit of saving that life. At this moment, we too can think of the courage of our loved ones who lie in bed in their last moments. I think of my own mother in excruciating pain, reassuring her children that she was at peace, calling her devoted nephews and nieces to say goodbye, reassuring them as well that she is ready and she will be fine. Where did she find the courage? Poet Danny Siegel writes the following: "You lie in bed, a human image of your diagnosis. You put on your best face for me and the rest of your friends who have come to say more than hello. We shift from one leg to another, stumbling over each other to recite as if from some biblical text. What a great season the Redskins are having," and all chime in how they stomped Atlanta yesterday. And not wanting to hurt us, you ask gently, "What are the chances the rabbi was right back in Hebrew school? You know, about there being a next world after this one, all peace and light." It's amazing how often we think of those final scenes of life. Of course, there are times when we have to deal with a total lack of closure. We get a call. There's been an accident, an overdose, an inexplicable suicide. We freeze. We go numb. God has blessed us with so many things, but also we're blessed with internal shock absorbers. We are not permitted to take it all in at once. It'll be a good while for the extent of the loss to really hit home. We also can go into shock when we know that the death of a loved one is coming, the reality seeping in ever so slowly. So many details to attend to: funeral home, plot, engaging the rabbi, shiva, the food, of course. All a whirl. Sometimes we begin to feel only when people have left, have gone back to their lives. Then there is eerie quiet and often disquiet. Why didn't I insist that my mother get that CAT scan? Why didn't I stay over that night? Why did they have to be in so much pain? Why didn't we call palliative care sooner? Deep down, we know we did the best we could. We demonstrated fierce love and devotion. We know that, but it takes a long time to feel that. At this Yizkor hour, for many of us, hopefully we've gotten beyond those last days. We don't see them as patients anymore, dying vestiges of their vital self. We see them in full vigor, his beautiful smile, her sage counsel. As we age and have to navigate the issues that come with each new decade, we can admire and respect them even more. How she picked herself up after your dad died, how he fought to be independent and not burden you until he absolutely had to. It's sometimes frustrating they want to hold on to the role of parent, even as their bodies are giving way and their skills are diminishing. Didn't they know that you're a full-grown adult capable of and wanting to care for them as they cared for you all those years? And now we appreciate their fierce pride, their need to hold on to dignity, but also to maintain their role as parent, to be the one to provide care and counsel, not the one in need of them. This insight is given to us in the wonderful biblical book of Ruth. The book teaches of a man named Elimelech, his wife Naomi, their two children, go to the country of Moab and live there. Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. She was left with her two sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, the other Ruth, and they lived there for about 10 years. Then those two boys also died, so 3 women are left without husbands. Famine, migration, 3 deaths in a single household, 3 widows. What to do? Mother Naomi urges the girls to leave her and embrace a new life. Orpah kisses her mother in warm farewell, but Ruth clings to her. Do not urge me to leave you, for wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Naomi overnight is transformed into a strong, independent, courageous woman. She turns back to Bethlehem, but Ruth too is strong and resolute, determined to begin her life anew, but with Naomi and among the people of Israel. Ruth realizes that by going with her, Naomi will continue the role of parent. She will bear responsibility for her family's future, her people's future. She'll not be able to self-destruct, to wilt, to collapse from the pain. She'll reach inside, like so many people who've lost their precious mates, to marshal all her resources, to pick herself up, to decide to live. For Ruth's sake, for the sake of the Jewish people and the world so in need of hope. Remarkably, this courageous Moabite woman will be, according to Jewish tradition, the ancestor of the Messiah. On a smaller scale, we can make a real difference even at the last moment. A nurse writes, "You're holding the telephone for a dying woman right against her cheek. A woman in a coma for weeks, now her throat open for breathing, unable to speak. I don't know what her daughter said, but it's as if this woman were surveying the boon alleys of the town below. She cradles the phone, making clicking sounds with her tongue. What does her daughter understand? I write this to her. Your mother lay with the phone beside her ear. Those sounds you heard were a lullaby. You made all the difference. She died rocking a baby to sleep. How important a role we can play, how often their role will be missed. A man comes to see the rabbi the morning after his wife died. The grief is utterly fresh. I had her for 46 years, Rabbi. It's a blessing, but the fact I had her that long makes it harder for me to try to imagine life without her. The rabbi notices the man is busy with his shirt collar. Sitting across from me as we spoke together, he kept checking it, adjusting the fit, straightening the back. I finally said, Morris, are you having trouble with your collar? Morris looked at me, focused through watery eyes. You see, it's just that my wife adjusted my collar for me every morning for 46 years. It reminds me of her to do this. I guess I'm going to have to learn to adjust my collar by myself from now on. When I do it, it'll make me think of her. Remembering gestures. Remembering all the little things they did for us that we now take for granted. We try to do them as a way of keeping them alive. Billy Crystal, in his play 700 Sundays, talks about his mother's stroke. I went back into her room. She was staring at nothing. It was like someone had taken Mom and replaced her with a duplicate. It was her, but not really her. I wanted to yell, "Give me my mother back." I kept thinking about the very first time she'd been in this hospital. I was 9 years old. She had pneumonia. They took her out the front door to the ambulance waiting in the driveway. "Don't worry," she called, "I'll be okay." They put her in the ambulance. Sirens wailed. She was gone. I was terrified. Just the way I feel now. The day after she checked in, I called her. "Mom, I'm coming over to see you. I have a new Charlie Chaplin routine that's really funny. I want to make you laugh. You can't come here. You have to be 16. I'll do it outside. It's pouring. Don't come. You can't stop me." And she didn't. Years later, she was in serious decline. Billy came back to the hospital. Again, it was pouring, and remarked about doing Charlie Chaplin in the rain. "Remember that, Mom? You were so mad. Remember I did Chaplin in the rain? Do you?" Suddenly, her eyes opened wide. "You're Billy Crystal. What are you doing here?" Crystal did about a year before my mom passed away. It was Saturday night in Los Angeles, very late, about 12:45, which actually makes it Sunday. The phone rings and I panic, because when you're a Jew and the phone rings late at night, it means somebody is dead. Or worse, they want money. But no, it's Mom calling from the house. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine, dear." "Mom, it's 3:30 in the morning your time." "I know. I just wanted to hear your voice, Bill, that's all. I woke up your brothers too. I wanted to hear your voice." Crystal continued, I'm an insomniac myself. I've been up since 1948. I wanted to find out why she couldn't sleep because somehow it might help me. Mom, why can't you sleep? There was a pause, and she said simply, I'm just listening for you boys. We do that too, don't we? Remembering all they meant to us, Rabbi Jack Reamer asks a profound question. When does death really occur? And he says, in a sense, it's not when the brain stops functioning or even when the heart stops beating, but when a person is no longer remembered by anyone, if no one listens for them. What a tragedy that would be. Our presence here is our answer, a rebuttal to the profound concern, will I be forgotten? So how can we ensure that they'll not be forgotten? Every Friday night, we invite you to hear the name of your loved one who has died recently or at this time of year. You can rise as if to say, Hineni, I'm here. You may come forward in the sanctuary to place stone on slate, producing that distinct loud sound that reverberates through the sanctuary or the chapel. The sound is a statement. No mom, no dad, sibling, children, you are not gone. Words, smile, influences are ever present in my life. You've not lived and died in vain. You have shaped my life in incredible ways. I don't know how to thank you. Don't know if I ever adequately expressed to you what you've meant to be. While the world rushes by, while my schedule is impossibly busy, you take the time. You enter the sanctuary inspired by the beautiful cantorial music, the rabbi's words of Torah, the majesty of this sanctuary, the still small voice of God that wells up inside of you, inspiring to do what otherwise you might resist. I think about my loved ones and wonder, how much time do I have? If only I knew. What if my time is short? What is the urgency of now? What is that thing, that gesture, that act of repentance, that attempt of family peace that now calls out for action? Can I hear your urgent call? Can I heed the message that you're sending from the grave, or perhaps from another realm where your soul resides in eternal blessed life? I think of these things, I listen for your name. The rabbi recites it and I say it over and over again. I rise in honor, tears may flow, we are now in a relationship. I walk to the front of the sanctuary, take the stone, place it on slate. The sound is powerful. I feel it throughout my body. Our souls reconnect and I say to you, Hineni, I am here. And so are you. You made a real difference in the world and in my life, and I am eternally grateful. Don't we hope that our loved ones will remember us precisely in that way? How much more can any of us hope for? It is a measure of a life well lived, no matter the length of our days. We turn in the Machzor then to page 606, rise to praise them as we rise to praise God in the words of Kaddish.